By the 15th century BC, the pharaohs of Egypt ruled one of the most powerful empires the ancient world had ever seen. Its borders stretched from Nubia in the south to the lands of Syria in the north. But in 1457 BC, a dangerous rebellion erupted. A coalition of Canaanite kings, led by the ruler of Qadesh, rose up against Egyptian rule and declared their independence. The response from Egypt's Pharaoh, Thutmose III, would lead to one of the most famous military confrontations of the ancient world. The Battle of Megiddo. It is the earliest battle in history for which we possess a detailed written account. For much of ancient history, the land known as Canaan stood at the crossroads of civilizations. Located between Africa, Asia, and the Mediterranean world, it served as a major hub for trade and cultural exchange. Since around 3000 BC, the Kingdom of Egypt had maintained trade relations with the peoples of the Levant. Ancient texts and archaeological discoveries reveal exchanges of goods such as pottery, tools, wheat, wine, and cedar wood. But politically, Canaan was very different from Egypt. While Egypt was a unified kingdom ruled by a single pharaoh, Canaan was divided into many small city-states and local kingdoms. These cities often competed with one another, forming temporary alliances or rivalries. Over the centuries, many Canaanites even settled in Egypt itself and lived among the native population. For a long time, Egyptian rulers did not see these northern neighbors as a serious threat. That perception would eventually change. In the 17th century BC, a group known as the Hyksos rose to power in the Nile Delta. Modern scholars believe they may have gradually migrated into Egypt over several generations. However, later Egyptian sources described them very differently. According to Egyptian inscriptions and later historians such as Manetho, the Hyksos were foreign invaders who destroyed cities, burned temples, and oppressed the native population. Whatever the truth behind their arrival, the Hyksos established the 15th dynasty and ruled northern Egypt for more than a century. Their capital was located at the city of Avaris in the northeastern delta, but their authority did not extend across the entire country. In southern Egypt, rival dynasties continued to rule independently. Eventually, a dynasty based in the city of Thebes rose to challenge Hyksos control. The kings of Thebes launched a war to expel the Hyksos from Egypt. Seqenenre-Tao began the struggle, and his son Kamose continued the fight. But it was Kamose's younger brother, Ahmose, who finally achieved victory. Around 1550 BC, Ahmose defeated the Hyksos and drove them out of Egypt entirely. The country was reunited. This moment marked the beginning of the New Kingdom, one of the most powerful periods in Egyptian history. From this point forward, Egypt would adopt a far more aggressive foreign policy. The Hyksos occupation had shown the Egyptians that their land was vulnerable to invasion. If powerful states in Western Asia marched toward Egypt, they would almost certainly pass through Canaan. So Egyptian rulers decided to control Canaan themselves. The early pharaohs of the 18th dynasty expanded Egyptian influence beyond the Nile Valley. Thutmose I pushed Egyptian control deep into Nubia and as far north as the Euphrates River in Syria. Many Canaanite and Syrian rulers were forced to acknowledge Egyptian authority and pay tribute. But maintaining control over such distant territories was difficult. After the death of Thutmose I, some of these rulers stopped sending tribute. Rebellions broke out across the Levant. Egypt's hold on its northern empire began to weaken. Around 1479 BC, a young prince named Thutmose III inherited the throne of Egypt at only 10 years old. Because he was still a child, his stepmother and aunt, Hatshepsut, ruled as regent. Within a few years, she assumed the full title of Pharaoh. Although Thutmose III remained co-ruler in name, Hatshepsut held real power. Her reign was marked by prosperity, monumental construction projects, and successful trade expeditions. Among her most famous achievements was a trading mission to the land of Punt, which brought back exotic goods such as myrrh, ivory, and gold. But while Egypt flourished economically, military affairs received less attention. As a result, Egypt's vassal states in Canaan gradually gained greater independence. Resentment toward Egyptian rule grew among the kings of the region. Some were also encouraged by the rising power of the Kingdom of Mitanni in northern Mesopotamia. Then, in January 1458 BC, Hatshepsut died. Thutmose III finally became the sole ruler of Egypt. Seeing an opportunity, the King of Qadesh organized a major rebellion. He united several Canaanite rulers and gathered a large army at the fortified city of Megiddo. Megiddo controlled a crucial trade route connecting Egypt with Anatolia and Mesopotamia. If the rebels held the city, they could threaten Egyptian influence throughout the region. Thutmose III responded immediately. In the spring of 1457 BC, he assembled an army at the fortress of Sile, near Egypt's eastern frontier. Historians estimate that this force numbered between 10 and 20,000 soldiers. Most were infantry equipped with swords, axes, and shields. There were also elite chariot units, usually operated by noble warriors accompanied by archers. Traveling with the army was the royal scribe Tianeni. He recorded the events of the campaign in a journal that later became the famous annals carved into the walls of the Temple of Amun at Karnak. These inscriptions provide historians with the earliest detailed description of a battle in recorded history. The Egyptian army marched quickly toward Canaan. In just 10 days, they traveled around 240 kilometers to the city of Gaza. After another 10 days of marching, they reached the town of Yohem. There, Thutmose received intelligence from scouts about the enemy's position near Megiddo. From Yehem, 3 different routes led to the city. 2 were longer, but safer. The third route passed through a narrow mountain pass known as the Aruna Pass. It was the shortest path, but also the most dangerous. Thutmose gathered his generals for a council of war. Most advised him to take one of the safer routes. If the army entered the narrow pass, they warned, the enemy could easily ambush them. But Thutmose believed the enemy expected exactly that. He reasoned that the rebels would concentrate their forces on the safer roads. So, he made a bold decision. The Egyptian army would march directly through the Aruna Pass. Early the next morning, the army entered the narrow pass. The column of soldiers, horses, and chariots stretched for nearly 20 kilometers. In some places, the path was barely wide enough for a single chariot. But Thutmose's gamble worked. The Canaanite army had concentrated most of its forces on the other approaches. Only a small guard protected the exit of the pass. The Egyptians quickly defeated them and emerged onto the plains near Megiddo. The rebels had been completely surprised. At dawn the next day, the Egyptians attacked. The Canaanite army took position on high ground near the city. Thutmose arranged his army in 3 divisions forming a wide crescent. As the Egyptians advanced, their left wing extended northward, cutting off the enemy's escape route. Meanwhile, Thutmose himself led the central assault. The attack broke through the Canaanite line and threw the rebel army into chaos. Seeing the pharaoh advancing, many of the Canaanite soldiers fled in panic toward the city of Megiddo. At that moment, the Egyptians could have achieved a complete victory. But many soldiers stopped to loot the abandoned enemy camp. This delay allowed the fleeing Canaanite forces to reach the safety of Megiddo's massive walls. What should have been a swift victory turned into a long siege. For several months, the Egyptian army surrounded the city. Eventually, with food supplies exhausted, Megiddo surrendered. Although the rebel kings had managed to escape, the fall of Megiddo forced many other Canaanite cities to submit to Egyptian rule. The Egyptians captured enormous spoils, including hundreds of chariots, thousands of horses, and vast quantities of weapons and livestock. Young princes from the region were taken to Egypt, where they were educated in Egyptian language and culture, before returning to rule as loyal client kings. Over the next 20 years, Thutmose III would launch many more campaigns across the Levant. But his victory at Megiddo remained his greatest achievement. It secured Egypt's control over Canaan and re-established Egyptian power in Western Asia. And thanks to the inscriptions left behind at Karnak, the Battle of Megiddo became the earliest battle in human history that we can reconstruct in remarkable detail.